Hello and welcome to episode 227 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Weekly Podcast. I'm Mike Sollosi, and here we're going to do our second ever movie review. Last year we did a movie review of Detective Pikachu, where Rob, Peter, and I sort of liked that movie more than we expected to. And now we have a movie with a different set of expectations and maybe a different overall feeling, but also with two different overall panelists. So joining me today is first, Alana Hagues.
Hey everyone.
And last, Zach Wilkerson.
Hi there.
Now, the movie that we're here to discuss is Dragon Quest: Your Story. This is an animated movie that came out in summer 2019 in Japan, and frankly, a shocking Western release on February 13th of this year. Alana and Zach, I was totally willing to accept that this movie would never ever leave Japanese shores, and I would watch a pirated subtitle of the Blu-ray 6 months later. Like, I had already accepted that in my heart. But then in January or maybe late December, we got a reveal from Netflix that they were publishing it in worldwide in territories outside Japan. That was crazy to me. Did you have a similar reaction of shock?
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, especially that they were actually dubbing it. I thought they might release it just with subs. That seemed like a strong possibility to me. But the fact that they did a dub, and we'll get to this later, but the dub was actually pretty good. I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree with that. I think I'm less surprised because Dragon Quest seems to have had a big uptake since Dragon Quest XI and then the Switch port last year. Mm-hmm. So perhaps they are finally realizing that it's more viable outside of Japan. But I think Netflix was probably the right place to do it, and they seem to have this big old pickup of like video game franchises. I mean, we've got Castlevania, and then they picked up the Ni no Kuni movie around the same time as well, which I would.
Yeah, I think it was announced the same day. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it has a broader appeal, but it's definitely a smaller series. But yeah, I mean, I was pretty surprised, and probably more surprised again that it was dubbed more than anything. I just expected a kind of sub. But yeah, I think we're pretty much all on the same page, really. I was ready to, like I did with Advent Children when it first came out, ready to like stream it online somewhere and watch it with subtitles. So it was a nice surprise.
Yeah, and you're right. I think Netflix was a natural place for this because Netflix has more money than they know what to do with, and they experiment with a lot of niche things. Like they pick up a lot of popular anime series that you would normally assume would go to a Funimation or a Crunchyroll or something under normal circumstances. But Netflix they sort of have their fingers in a lot of different content creation pots, and they landed on Dragon Quest: Your Story. And listeners, I'm going to record this with Alana and Zach here, assuming that you've already seen this movie. We're going to spoil the hell out of this movie. We might gloss over details and talk about visual things like art style that assume that the listenership has also seen it, which is normal for us. We talk about spoilers a lot, but I really implore you, try to see this movie before listening to the podcast, just because of some endgame stuff. The ending of this movie is so surprising that I really value that spoiler-free experience. So, with out of the way, let's start spoiling this movie. Dragon Quest: Your Story, a very loose adaptation of Dragon Quest V, one of the more lastingly popular games in the series. I recorded the podcast on it for this very series. Oh goodness, in 2017 or 2018, I don't know. The years run together by now.
That was a while ago, yeah, when Rob Steinman was still on the staff, and
it was before my time. So yeah,
and this movie actually uses footage from the original Super Famicom version. At the very the Dragon Quest V is sort of in 4 parts, where you play part of the game as a child, then as a teenager, then as a newlywed, and then as a father. And they sort of gloss over most of the child section by showing clips from the original Super Famicom version of the game. But like they go over a lot of stuff from the first few hours of the game in a 16-bit cutscene, and then they weave it into a 3D animation style that I don't know. It's not really anime, and it's not really rounded edges Western either. It toes the line a little bit. It kind of reminded me of the Astro Boy movie from like 8 years ago.
Oh yeah, it's a good comparison. Yeah.
But it's not unattractive and sometimes very expressive and beautiful. What did you think of the visual style of the movie?
I really liked it. I think, heads up in case people haven't seen the front page or have been on RPG Fan, I did actually do a write-up for the Dragon Quest movie. So you should go and check that out and see what I feel. Again, I would say watch it maybe beforehand. I've tried to stay spoiler-free in it, but...
Listeners, that would be in the features section, and it posted on February 19th of this year. So, yeah, please go and check that out. I'm sure it'll overlap with the discussion that we're having right now.
It's awesome, too.
Yeah, probably will overlap a little bit. But I kind of found it like DreamWorksy kind of style, kind of like How to Train Your Dragon-esque characters, maybe a little bit more mature. I think the Astro Boy movies are quite a nice comparison.
Yeah, I just looked it up. The Astro Boy movie was 11 years ago, not 8. So
Really?
I don't understand this passage of time anymore.
Jesus, yeah, I didn't realize it was that old either. But I thought it was really good, and I know one sticking point when it came out in Japan was that the characters don't use Akira Toriyama's art style, but I don't think it harms anything necessarily. I think that it's got its own visual identity to a degree. The only thing I would nitpick maybe is that, you know, Dragon Quest monsters have their own personality and style, and because of Toriyama's art style and that is kind of retained, so there's a little bit of a visual clash. It's not too terrible and you get used to it, but I think that's maybe my only nitpick. But I think it's gorgeous. Like, it's so pretty, it's so well lit, it's so expressive, and I think I was pretty mesmerized by it visually.
Yeah, and I thought the characters moved really well. They like it doesn't have the same, you know, eyes and hair and bold lines that Toriyama's art does, but just the way the characters moved did not feel stilted or awkward or bad. Like you could tell it was sort of a maybe not like, you know, top of the line Pixar animation, but this was an expensive movie. There was there was effort put into the animation studio.
Yeah, I mean, the director for this worked on the Lupin the Third CGI movie as well that came out in Japan in December 2019, and like the comparison is you can see the similarities easily. They both look stunning. Like,
there's been probably dozens of Lupin movies over the years in Japan. Like the first Lupin anime was, I think, in the late 60s. He's a bit of an he's a bit of an animation institution. So for the big Lupin movie probably did have a good budget, and that's a solid pedigree for this one. I'm not that familiar with that director's work. I did watch the recent Lupin series, but I haven't seen the recent movie.
No, I haven't either. I'm sure Netflix will probably acquire it at some point, or whoever owns the license to Lupin over here. So,
you know, I really have no idea. I'm not sure of any Lupin stuff that has made it over to North America except for the Green Jacket series.
I know they have the Miyazaki Lupin.
Castle Cagliostro. Yeah.
Yeah.
In every series, Lupin has a different colored jacket.
He does.
So, yeah, the Green Jacket one is the 70s one, I think. But anyway, back to Dragon Quest. So loose adaptation of Dragon Quest V. It sort of starts in the second half of the childhood segment, where you're visiting. I forget the name. It's the town to the east of Wheelbrook, where Harry is the prince. Basically, the hero meets the bratty Prince Harry, and then his father Pankraz rescues him. And you can sort of tell Pankraz is living in an isolated area with you and your father's servant Sancho. You're traveling the world, but in search of your mother, who you only see in the 16-bit cutscene at the beginning at first. So you have this vague larger quest of searching for your mom, but also when the hero meets Prince Harry, this is one of the things that bothered me the most about the movie. The hero is so clumsy and doofy for most of the run of the movie. In most of the Dragon Quest games, the hero has sort of a quiet confidence about him.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a silent protagonist, or she. So of course, there's the quiet half of that quiet confidence. But but they always seem to, you know, be level-headed, doing the heroic thing, and rarely pratfalling or totally being played for comedy. But like the the hero in Dragon Quest Your Story is a bit of a clumsy buffoon at times. For a while, first you're in the movie, you see the hero playing with Harry as children, and then a little bit later you see them escape out of a temple together as teenagers. And in both cases, Harry is sort of the cooler one, the one who's sort of taking action and taking charge. And I did not like that one bit.
Yeah, I don't like I don't like Harry's characterization in this film at all, and I think it's kind of a larger problem with like my bigger problem of the film overall is this beginning sequence. Like the SNES Famicom section crossed over with like 2 minutes to cover that childhood arc in CGI is not enough, and I think the childhood arc does a lot to establish most of the game's story and emotional impact. Like isn't part of the point that Harry is supposed to be a spoilt brat who grows over the period of 8 years, so from or 10 years or however long they're in captured for, but like he's a bit of a brat obviously in the beginning because he's like 6 or 7 or however old he's meant to be, and then it fast forwards 8-10 years and all of a sudden he's like a tiny bit like, oh no, I don't want to be smeared in mud, but otherwise he's just pretty flat and normal, and like you say, the more confident of the two of them. I'm not as fussed about Luca, who's the hero's name in this film, his clumsiness. I think it's probably a way to make him more endearing, and it will probably come clear as we get towards the end discussion why he's a little bit clumsy. Or
it's put in context later, but in the moment I did not appreciate it.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Harry's kind of character and this beginning section is maybe part of my bigger problem with this film.
I mean, I really enjoyed the 16-bit section. Like when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, it's really cool. I played it emulated many years ago, and so like it certainly engaged me. But then like it starts so late, like it causes the actual movie proper to start so late in the childhood arc, like right at the end of it, at the maybe like the one or two most emotional moments that to me it doesn't work. And I agree with you about Harry because they try to do it a little bit in the beginning of the second arc when they're enslaved, but it doesn't really show any growth. And I have some other real problems with the way they use Harry at the very end of this movie. Oh my! But
that was about.
That makes zero sense. But yeah, I mean, I think that them cutting. I wish they had taken the 15 minutes they added at the end and just made that and spent that money on the beginning of the movie instead, and it would be about 10 times stronger.
Right. It glosses over several of the storylines within the first arc by having these not even 16-bit scenes, just glimpses of 16-bit scenes. And then they go to the portion where Harry and Luca are captured, and Luca's father Pankraz rescues them. And Zach was alluding to this. Pankraz sacrificing himself to save his son is one of the most impactful scenes in the entire game. It did not live up to the game version in this movie version. Like I don't think it was the fault of the actors reading the dialogue. It was just choreographed poorly.
I mean, it happens like 5 minutes into the movie. I mean, even as a person who's played this game maybe 4 or 5 times, like I felt nothing. And I've always felt something when I was playing the game. Always.
If anything, I think they should have glossed over like the middle arcs of this game and not the beginning, because like setting up what the hero's motivation is. Setting up what the hero's motivation is and how much of a great man Pankraz is, only for him to die saving his son, I think is really important, and they resolve that in the first 10 minutes. It's a bit of a disappointment.
I don't think they would ever capture it perfectly, because part of the emotion of playing Dragon Quest V is that you are controlling Pankraz in that fight as he is getting beaten up and killed. So I don't think they'd ever perfectly get it, but I do think that not showing the hero, not showing Luca with his father, not showing his father doing all these cool things, not showing how strong he is, it does lose that impact. Like going through that dungeon to save your father or save Harry is, that's not there either. Like it just glosses over that section as well. And yeah, you don't really get a sense that actually, oh my god, Pankraz is this incredible person. And
also they gloss over meeting Nera and Bianca for the first time, and meeting Percy for the first time. So when they're so when all three of those are introduced in like the I don't know, the second quarter of the movie, there's this moment of great recognition that Luca has, but the audience doesn't really share that moment of recognition. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, who are these people that Luca seems extremely happy to see? Oh, okay, that's weird.
I'm fairly certain the film's banking on you having played the game.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
think,
yes.
like, I was quite shocked to see people who enjoyed this film, and actually it's better than I thought it was going to be, because I'd heard that obviously it didn't get good reception in Japan. But I'd heard people saying that you could probably watch this without playing the game, and I think you could, but I think some things will be lost, like the way it glosses over certain character arcs, the way it glosses over certain things, and like you're not going to get, we've all played the game, you two more than I have, and more frequently, we've all played it, and we all know where these moments are, and we expect them, and we're like, oh yeah, they're nice memories for us, and kind of thing, and that's kind of how the film plays out. But like, if you've never played the game before, it's just going to be like, wait, what's going on? Oh, okay, they met this. Okay, all right. Oh, they're like now happy that they were reunited with Percy, and their dads died and things like that. It just doesn't feel right without the context, I don't think, of playing the game.
I agree. This movie sort of assumes that the viewer has played Dragon Quest V before and has, to a point, Dragon Quest as part of their life before.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, even as a person who adores Dragon Quest, the movie still has to stand on its own, and it doesn't because of that. Like, I have and I said this before we started recording. Like, I had a stupid smile on my face while I was watching this when we, got Saber, or Percy as he's called here, and and all the slime moments and all the musical cues, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Like, I enjoyed seeing these moments in CGI that I've experienced, but I mean, it doesn't work without the setup, and so I don't feel it in the same way. I feel it purely as nostalgia for that game, and not in any way as enjoyment of this specific film experience.
A significant amount of how much I enjoyed this film, which I view positively. I thought that parts of this. I mean, spoiler for maybe some of our final thoughts, but I thought this movie was a little disappointing. But ultimately, I liked it. Like, I'm glad I watched it. Although I just have weird specific caveats and disappointments. But one of those disappointments is the way it glossed over parts of the game, and it felt like it assumed a level of pre-knowledge. I think it was challenging. Like, maybe this should have been a 4-part, like 4 short films, an hour each or something.
Yeah, like half an hour, I think.
Yeah, Alana, you mentioned how Netflix was sort of getting in on the video game adaptation corner. What if they had made this a 4 or 6 episode series like Castlevania?
Yeah, I would have been down for that.
I think that
was originally supposed to be a movie too. So there you go.
It feels like a more appropriate format, especially since Netflix absolutely thrives on people doing binges of medium-sized series. Or extremely long series, but you can watch almost all of Midsummer Murders on Netflix, on American Netflix, Alana.
Can you?
Yeah, they have like 11 seasons or something insane.
I'm
sorry, 11 series. Yeah, so it's unusual where they sort of pick and choose what areas to spend a lot of time on and what areas to not spend any time on, and that moves that moves us to when Harry and Luca are captured and are left in slavery to work in this temple for 8 years or 10 years or some amount of time like that, and then they have a dramatic escape, and they meet Dr. Aegon during their escape, and
it makes me laugh every time.
Yes, and Harry and Luca part ways. Although there's no nun character for Harry to fall in love with, which is a bit of a bummer, but not the worst omission. We'll get to who the worst omission is later. But they feature that they play the temple escape sequence almost in its entirety when it's maybe 10 or 15 minutes in the game, and then the hero immediately sprints towards heroism, and he finds his childhood home, gets his father's sword, reunites with his father's servant Sancho, who's very amusing in this movie, and sort of like. There's just a montage of him defeating monsters and grinding levels basically until he's until he's an adventurer of some ability by the time he reaches what was it? Is it Monstro Ferrato? Was the
it's straight to there.
Yeah, he goes straight to the around the midpoint of the game where he meets his childhood friend Nera and his childhood friend Bianca. And on the before this, during the level up montage, he meets his childhood cat Percy, who's now a fully grown saber cat. So it's and also recruits a slime named was Gertrude?
Yes.
Gertrude, yeah.
Yeah. So
also, best part of this movie.
Yes, the slime the slime is a positive presence in this movie. So like recruiting Percy and Gertrude sort of references the monster recruitment edge of Dragon Quest V, which is a lot of how you build your party. You invite monsters to join your team, and by the end of the game, throughout the whole of the game, most of your team is going to be monsters that you met along the way. And they don't exactly give you an army of monsters to follow behind you in your caravan, but they give them a couple, at least Percy and Gertrude.
I missed my Slime Knight and my Golem because those were mainstays for me.
The Slime Knight, the Golem, the Heel Slime, and the Great Dragon. Those are my four. Those are the four I always want.
I've never grinded for the Great Dragon, but otherwise, yes, I agree.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this on the podcast years ago. I thought the Great Dragon was the coolest monster I'd ever seen. The first time I played the game, so I did grind for that one. And every time I played it since, I've thought to myself, should I grind for the Great Dragon or should I not? And then I end up doing it every time.
They're so cool looking though.
Armor
dragons are so cool.
Yeah, I've gotten that golden dragon every playthrough I've done of 5, and sometimes it's taken me like 30 minutes, and sometimes it's taken me multiple afternoons. But I've always gone for it.
Such a gorgeous looking dragon though.
Yeah, and I don't think that dragon shows up in this movie, regrettably. But that's I'll let it slide. But this sequence where Luca is trying to obtain the hero's sword because part of his father's journey was searching for the hero that would save the world, and Pankraz knew that he himself wasn't the hero, but thought his son might be because his wife was was Zenithian, and the hero had to be of a Zenithian lineage. So Nera's father is holding onto the sword, which is not exactly how it happens in the game, but again, I don't care that deeply about it this time, and instead of having to search for the 2 magic rings to woo Nera's hand in marriage, the hero has to defeat Bjorn, which normally happens near the end of the game in Dragon Quest V. But they're truncating it for this movie. And then we have a real Looney Tunes moment where Luca just charges into the cave and gets booted out like Wile E. Coyote style.
I do really love those fight sequences, though. I think these are some of my favorite parts of the film. The whole training montage and this fight with Bjorn at the beginning of this part, I really, really enjoy.
I think this whole sequence is by far the strongest part of this movie, in my opinion.
I think the action choreography is very good. When the hero and his companions are fighting are fighting groups of monsters, it's exciting. And some of the big sword strikes and the big dodges have impact. It's like, okay, this is a cartoony action sequence, but it's a well produced one of those. And even when Bjorn is chasing the hero and Bianca riding on Percy's back, and Percy's like jumping from cliff to cliff, I'm like, okay, this wouldn't be out of place in, like Alana said, in a How to Train Your Dragon or some such. But the action is very shonen anime and very cartoony in a way that I thought was pretty satisfying. Like I rarely had a problem with the action in this movie until the very end.
Yeah.
which we'll get to.
Yeah, likewise.
But one of the big cruxes in the game Dragon Quest V is choosing who you marry. You have your childhood, the sort of very demure, very noble Nera, and the sort of more tomboyish, more confident Bianca. And you were childhood friends with Bianca and went on a few adventures together in the first part of the game. And and Nera, you meet once briefly as a child and then briefly as an adult. And you definitely think she's pretty, but the game sort of pushes you towards Bianca. Like they try to give you more of an attachment to Bianca in a way that I think between those two. Sorry, Zach, we're setting Deborah aside for this for the purpose of this conversation.
About the character we missed the most.
that is a question that I will ask later. But putting Deborah aside for now, I think that Bianca is the more lastingly popular of the marriage options in this game. And the game frames it that way. But in the movie, the way they do it, they have Luca weirdly enthusiastic to marry Nera, and then he meets Bianca and reconnects with her at a bar shortly after pledging to marry Nera, and then an old woman gives him a mysterious potion that'll make him express his true feelings. And when Luca drinks the potion out of curiosity, he dives into the well of his soul or something, and then you see Dragon Quest text boxes appear, basically tell him that Bianca is who he loves in his heart. In a movie that was real strange, but we'll revisit in a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, they do a fair job in the ending of trying to explain this away, and they explain a lot of things away in the ending, which I know we'll talk about later. Mm-hmm. But I do think they do a fair job. They actually make Bianca way more appealing here than they ever did to me in the original. They take the best parts of Deborah and mix it with Bianca to make her into sort of a badass. And I like the way that they characterize Bianca here.
Bianca's cool.
But Nera is also characterized in a way that makes her sympathetic, which I like. I mean, I think that even though the change from, I think Alana might have pointed this out in her review, the change from Nera to Bianca is a little strange. I can at least buy it because as the audience, I'm sitting there watching thinking Bianca is so much cooler than Nera. You have got to go with Bianca.
I think they made Bianca and Nera both very likable here.
I agree.
They're both well written.
Yeah. Nera is sort of clumsy, cute, but also definitely smart and not a total pushover. And Bianca is just confident and funny, and she pushes Luca's buttons in a way that's really appealing. And you're sort of rooting them to end up together, even when Luca is awkwardly wooing Nera, and Bianca is trying to get him to not be a complete mess. But then when he eventually rejects Nera and goes with Bianca, it's a very sweet moment. And then there's in a reveal that was not in the game at all, because the old woman was not in the game at all. The old woman that gave Luca the potion ends up being Nera in disguise. From the beginning, Nera knew that the hero had someone else in his heart, and so she pushed him in that direction, which was a twist that feels a little contrived, but I don't hate it. Sort of.
I do.
Okay. All right.
I don't like it, but again, I think that they try to explain it away at the end. They try to explain away almost everything I dislike about this movie at the end.
Yeah.
The hero going with what's really in his heart and choosing Bianca over Nera is not the worst idea, but the way that he so quickly agrees to marry Nera and then so quickly dumps her, and then Nera sort of rolling with it and pushing him towards Bianca, that was shitty. But giving Nera a little bit more agency and a little bit more control over the situation, instead of having her just be someone who's proposed to and then rejected, I think that softens the blow a little bit. But there's worse ways that he could have ended up with Bianca.
Yeah, you're right. I think on reflection, I think my bigger issue is more the fact that you know if you've played the game, and actually I think even the 16-bit sequence does this. I think it shows Bianca and Luca going up Tatton Towers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you already know they've had a bit more time together, but and even in the game, Luca and Nera don't really spend any time together until he gets to Monteferrato, and
they met once as children because their dads were friends.
Yeah, and so the minute he sees her, he's immediately head over heels in love with her. It's just I don't buy it, and I never bought it. But I guess again that's the whole point, isn't it? And that's what the ending does, is that.
We're side-eyeing this ending so much.
I'm throwing around.
I don't know how we can't. I mean,
it really changes the entire view of the movie. Once they put some of those new plot cards on the table. But we're not going to get to the ending yet. We still have more to talk about. They end up defeating Bjorn, and in one of the more amusing parts of the game, when Luca basically points his sword between Bjorn's eyes and basically says, pledge your life to me or have me kill you, and Bjorn literally says, I yield, I'll help you, and then his eyes turn from red to white or something.
It's like Shin Megami Tensei Monster Collecting.
Yeah.
Dragon Quest.
It's really watching the Pokeball shake and then fade to gray.
Yeah.
It's
I really like that. It was really cool.
Yeah, and Bjorn doesn't join you as like your steed for the rest of the trip or anything, but but it still was a little bit of an odd moment to end that conflict. And but the hero ends up marrying Bianca. Everyone in the bar cheers, which is again really contrived. And then they recreate the fastest pregnancy in video game history by having Bianca give birth to a son about 30 real seconds later.
There is a suggestion that time's passed in this one, at least.
There is, yes. There is suggestion that there is like montage sequence that suggests the passage of time. Where
no climbing mountains though when you're pregnant.
Yeah, but not in the game where you ride a boat for half a day, climb a mountain for half a day, and suddenly your wife has morning sickness.
Oh, twins! Ah.
But no twins.
But not anymore.
No twins anymore.
Yeah. Instead of having boy and girl twins whose hair color appropriately is inherited from the mother, they just have a single son, Alice, and Aalus. I'm not, they're not like in Wonderland. And the hero's son is, I don't think he's portrayed badly, but I definitely resent that there's only one of them. Zach was mentioning we should talk about the things that we dislike the most being omitted. For me, it's the daughter. Like the part of the whole point of Dragon Quest V is you choose who you marry, you have 2 kids, and then you like save the day as a family.
Yeah.
And they eliminated half of the twins, and that bothers me quite a bit. And of course, they had to write out the girl twin instead of the boy twin.
Right. Well, she's not the Zenithian hero, so I mean that's problematic. I suppose.
That is true, and it might have been cooler if Dragon Quest V they made the girl the hero.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
But another thing that is different from the game. First, one thing that they do have in common with the game, in both the game and the movie, the hero and his wife are turned to stone, and then there's another time skip. But the way that the transformation in the time skip is handled is very different in Dragon Quest Your Story. Instead of having Laja, the demon who killed your father, turn you to stone and then separate the 2 statues, there's a big dramatic fight scene that the hero loses, and then he's turned to stone very dramatically in a big pose and everything. With his father's sword, and then Bianca is spirited away to the castle, and then she's turned into stone for defying Laja and refusing to cooperate with him. Not as powerful as what happens in the game, but the stone sequence and this time skip are one of the most memorable parts of the game. Zach, we've talked about this a little bit off air. I feel bad that you aren't someone's lawn ornament for several years.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is always the most powerful part of Dragon Quest V, and I know like they try to reproduce it a little bit. Like they give you like the season changes in this movie that you have in Dragon Quest V, but like the idea of like them being together and then getting separated, and like you sort of slowly seeing your children grow up as it's happening. I just feel like the music of the game, the feel of the game, I always hate to compare movies to their source material in this way. Maybe I'm too close to Dragon Quest V to talk about it, but
I'm too close to the Jake Gyllenhaal adaptation of Prince of Persia.
Just having him out in the middle of nowhere, like it just did not work for me.
And Alana, the way they handle the stone transformation and that time skip, how does that do as an omission for you? Like, does it cheapen the movie a further degree as it did for me, or were you a little more accepting of it than maybe Zach or I was?
It was probably a little bit less, but I do remember being a bit weirded out by the fact that, because it's not been that long since I played Dragon Quest V, but like I specifically remember thinking it was odd that they weren't turned to stone together, and I think I'm glad they showed the season changes and things like that.
Yes.
But yeah, I think having Bianca turn to stone with Laja in the final dungeon or final area, it did cheapen it a little bit, but I guess this is to do with the kind of contracted length of the film, it's giving the hero an extra goal to go after, because at this point you don't really have any build up to his mother. You don't really know what she is. You've heard what she is, but there hasn't been as much information, and there never really is any more information, because you don't really go to Zenithia and you don't get the castle back and anything else like that.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's entirely
I don't even want to talk about that. Yeah,
No,
yeah, and they made the journey to the fairy realm a 1 minute in the end of the movie instead of a.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, in the game, it's an adventure that you go on, as a child, and then it's a callback later in the movie, where you revisit there to resolve some end game plot threads. But here, they basically, when all is lost and they're not sure how to get to the final dungeon area, they consult with the fairies, and they set you on the path to getting the golden orb, which is one plot point from the game that actually I think they handled pretty well.
I do too.
At the in the game version of Dragon Quest, there's you meet a man with a blue turban near the very beginning, and he admires a golden orb that you found at Up at 10 Towers with your on your adventure that you had with Bianca, and then gives it back to you. And then later in the game, you realize that that golden orb was a key to reviving the castle of Zenithia. But it's smashed by Lodja right after he kills your father. So what you do is with the fairies' help, you go back in time, meet yourself as a child. You were the blue turban man, of course, and surreptitiously swap the real golden orb for a fake. So the one that Lodja smashes in the after killing Pankraz is a fake, and that's a cool moment in the game and a pretty cool moment in the movie version. It's they make both adult you and kid you they make that interaction very sweet, and
they make it fun, don't they?
Yeah, they make it fun, and also Luke seeing his father briefly in the distance is a nice moment. Yeah, that I think was it was well placed and well executed, but again, just the order that they do it in, and how they. Instead of reviving this castle, it just is a transformation item for Dr. Agon, Dragon. It takes a large part of the game that was really cool, because like Zenithia is this legendary location in Dragon Quest. It was in Dragon Quest IV, and you sort of going through its ruins and then restoring it to glory by having it rise up out of the ground and become this floating airship for you in the latter part of the game. Like that is a moment that I don't love that they completely cut.
Yeah, I think that's maybe one of my bigger pet peeves. And I didn't mean to jump ahead to the Zenithia castle.
No, it's fine. We're jumping all over the place.
Yeah, no, it kind of just stood out to me in that would be the thing that they'd cut, and then they'd fast forward kind of Bianca's capture rather than, than cut that piece out instead. I would have preferred, I would have preferred it to be done similarly to the game, but again, I don't want to be like Zach said, even though I've only played Dragon Quest V once, I'm comparing it a lot to the game, but it's because I think the game does so much of it so well that I don't know, I feel like the emotional impact isn't there, and I'm struggling basically to
I mean, I think it's a really cool moment in the games, but I miss it a lot. But at least I understand why they cut this particular moment. Like, it would have cost a lot of animation money to really sell
an
Zenithia moment.
And this movie has about a 90-minute runtime, which is normal for cartoon adaptations like this. They really had to make some choices with what to include and what not to.
Yeah, at least they kind of cut the entire arc rather than just bits of it. Like, we know she's Zenithian, but really outside of that, did we really need to know anything else about the castle, the people, or anything like that? Probably not in context, but I still like that bit in the game.
And so, speaking of letting us know that Bianca's Zenithian, there's a
I meant the mother, actually.
Oh, well, either of them really.
Yeah,
we know that Luca has Zenithian ancestry because of his mother, but ends up not being the hero because he can't wield the sword that he gets in Monsterferrato. But it turns out that their son Alice is the hero, and that's true for both the game and the movie. After Alice and Sancho find the hero and remove his petrification curse with the staff of Stolos or Storos, which again should be wielded by the daughter, but I'm gonna gloss over that. But after they heal him of his petrification, the 7 or 8-year-old Alice reacts to wielding the sword, and and is revealed he is the hero of legend, which is amusing, both in the game and in the movie. I think that you're the hero, but not capital V, capital hero.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about the ending, I think that one of the coolest parts of this game is that you are like the dad and you're not the hero.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think that the ending sort of ruins this particular element of the game as well. But yeah.
Oh, we'll get to that ending soon. We've only.
Sorry, I can't help it.
No, I can't help it either. We've only, like, between the three of us, we've only hinted at it 10 times. After Alice realizes this, the sequence with the fairies and the golden orb and Dr. Aegon happens, and then Dr. Aegon transforms into a dragon, and the whole crew flies up to the to Lodge's castle. There's a lot of fighting of demons. You heal Bianca's petrification curse, and briefly meet your mother for a few minutes. She's been held prisoner there by Lodge for probably decades. And Lodge has been growing stronger and stronger, getting power from the underworld, trying to break the barrier that your mother has set between the real world and the underworld. And you finally challenge Lodge and lose pretty badly. But then they're in a really insane handful of moments. Prince Harry returns with the whole army of his kingdom, and
Does that make sense?
And Bjorn the giant demon returns, which makes a little more sense somehow. Yeah. I bought that one a little bit more easily.
I can buy
than
the
Harry.
Bjorn, yeah.
Yeah, he's carrying the boat as well.
Yeah, which is an image. But there's a big dramatic battle. The hero completely weights the two demons that Slan and Khan that beat his dad decades earlier. There's a bunch of big flashy sword moves and Bianca casting spells. Again, I think the action choreography in this movie is pretty good. So seeing Bianca just yell "Kafrizzle" and shooting fireballs at Cyclopses and stuff, I dig most of this. Sure,
super satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a big dramatic battle against Lodge that is a little less satisfying because I don't know. It just didn't. It didn't have
quick.
Yeah, it was really fast. It didn't have the emotional weight of like you seeing your dad and mom's ghosts sort of watching over you during the final blow. That was so great in the game. But then in the game, you sort of you break the seal to Nadiria and then go through and then just travel through the underworld for a while and eventually fight Lodge and Nimzo at a castle at the end. Instead here, you beat Lodge, then the gate opens because of, I don't know, some contrived BS.
Wow, I was trying to think, like, why?
That could be the subtitle to this movie.
Right.
Some contrived BS.
Mm-hmm. But the viewer, is probably expecting a giant demon or whatever Nimzo is to come out through the portal and be the true final boss. But that's not exactly what happens. Does someone want to try to explain this to me instead? Because I'm not sure I could do it justice.
I think that they know that the Zenithian sword will seal the gate, and so Bjorn chucks him up to go throw the sword through the gate, and it closes, and that's all. I think that's it. I don't know how they know that the sword closes it. I don't think they ever really explained that. But
no, they know that somehow the hero and the sword are the key to defeating it, but their solution is to chuck the sword at the gate. But it doesn't exactly go as planned, because Nimzo ? Comes out of the gate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is such a strange thing.
Yeah, this is the twist that we've been avoiding talking about for 40 minutes.
And to cut it short, Nimzo ? is a virus or like a program within a VR version of Dragon Quest V that a particular person is playing, and Nimzo ? the virus tries to explain to the hero why he's there and what he's built there to, what he's there to do. And then there's this whole sequence where the hero character is trying to explain why he keeps coming back to play Dragon Quest V, with a big sequence of basically like why everybody plays Dragon Quest. You know, why do we play video games? Oh well, so we can go on adventures and things like that.
I had one of the stupidest realizations I've ever had watching a movie when I understood that this movie is not called Dragon Quest V. This movie is called Dragon Quest: Your Story, because we're not watching an adaptation of Dragon Quest V. We're watching a person who loves Dragon Quest play a VR version of Dragon Quest.
Which I think is a cool idea, and actually, like, shout out to... I love the VR stage that they show, like, where it, like, the amusement area or, like, the arcade that it's played in. Like, the person who operates the machinery is dressed up like one of the soldiers from Dragon Quest 4, I think.
Either 3 or 4, yeah.
I mean, I would play the hell out of this. I mean, I'll give them that.
Yeah.
If this was a real thing, I would waste hours of my life and on it. But also it informs earlier parts of the movie, like how the hero is so clumsy and goofy. It's because it's the personality of the player and not necessarily the personality of the hero we remember from Dragon Quest V. And how there was the weird segment about his true feelings and choosing Nera than Bianca, because the player mentions in this flashback that, you know, I'm going to choose Nera this time, even though I always pick Bianca. Bianca's my favorite in my heart. And the proprietor even goes, oh, you can program that into the game if you want, and which is, you know, why the drinking the potion in the dream was communicated in that way. It puts everything else in the movie into context, and I like the subversiveness of that idea, but it ultimately made me roll my eyes a little bit. Zach, just a week ago we were talking about Nier Automata. Yeah. And part of Nier Automata is like the game telling you you're just playing a silly video game, and it challenges the player to do you respect the game you're playing or not, but in this one, in Dragon Quest: Your Story, this movie just goes into a completely sappy soliloquy over. Yeah. We love Dragon Quest. We care about these Dragon Quests. These worlds are real to us, and Dragon Quest is the players. This is your story in a way that is like this is a cute idea, I guess, but I'm just rolling my eyes at all of it.
I mean, it might have worked for me if the movie had been good. Again, I enjoyed watching this movie. I smiled through it, but it wasn't good. It missed almost every beat of the narrative that I think is powerful. Like, Pankraz is not a ghost watching you at the end. It's hugely important. I mean, and again, if it wants to position itself as a love letter to Dragon Quest fans and a love letter to Dragon Quest V, then it needed to position itself in a way that actually acknowledged what's really great about Dragon Quest V. And there are moments where it does. It tries. Whereas with something like Nier Automata, I'm like, that's the end of the actual game. And then Nier Automata is absolutely incredible. So it works there. It does not work here because you were not respectful of the actual narrative itself. Because, again, when I was talking earlier, like, oh, I can't compare it to the original narrative. The movie wants me to compare it to the original narrative, and it does a bad job of it.
I basically agree with you, and part of this is an issue of time. Both Nier Automata and Dragon Quest V are RPGs in the 25 to 30 hour range, and this is a 90-minute movie. So of course it plays like a collection of Sports Center highlights than of a real adaptation of Dragon Quest V, and that's okay. But in the choices that it makes, I think it cheapens some of the best moments of Dragon Quest V, and does this endgame choice that comes across as sappy and making the entire movie like count less than if it had been a more straightforward adaptation, just trying to recreate Dragon Quest V as best as it can. Again, I think this movie would have been served better as an episodic series that's several episodes, and I think that it would have been better served without this twist, making everything a VR experience, and then the character waking up from a dream, Super Mario 2 style.
Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of.
Because they eliminated the dance scene at the end, and that is unforgivable.
Oh yeah, the ballroom at the end before the credits roll. That's such a beautiful ending.
Unforgivable.
They completely eliminate the kingdom of Gotha.
Exactly.
Let's talk about some of the.
Sancho calls you Your Majesty throughout, and it makes no sense.
let's talk about some of the things they've eliminated. The third marriage option from the DS version, Deborah, is not in the game.
That is also unforgivable, as you know, I believe.
Prince Harry's entire arc is gone. In the game, he falls in love with a young woman that escapes with you, named Maria, who at first joins the church as a nun, and then eventually leaves to become Harry's wife. And then Harry makes a real character change, and when you revisit him again as an adult, he has a young son, and you reconnect with him that way. All of that's gone. The entire kingdom of Gotha/Granvania is gone. The entire Zenithia castle is gone. The Rise from Ruin and is this big sort of like Mount Olympus style castle in the clouds that is one of the signature parts of Dragon Quest in the 90s. They completely eliminate the hero's daughter. Now there's only one kid, and he's the hero, instead of being a sort of a son and daughter going on an adventure with mom and dad to save the world at the later part of the game. I could keep going on and on. There's no caravan. Like, you don't have a horse pulling a wagon. I think of Dragon Quest V as a man in a turban with a horse-drawn carriage being with his wife, children, and their monster pals. That is Dragon Quest V to me, and instead this is what we got. I didn't hate this movie. Like Zach said, I was mostly watching it with a smile. Like, there were fun moments, including the fight scenes and when he proposes to Bianca, and like parts of it that hit me in the exact right nostalgia parts of my brain and Dragon Quest fan parts of my brain that had me like pleased to see what was happening on the screen. But ultimately, I don't think they made all the right choices in this adaptation.
No, I sit with you there, basically. I think that they missed... Some of the bits that they skipped over are understandable, I think, like Gotha and the Zenithia stuff. And
sure, yeah.
Yeah, it does, it makes sense where they've cut it, but it's the stuff like the childhood arc, I think, that really sets the film up for a failure. There's a failure in my eyes. Maybe not failure, but like you were saying, all those emotional hits, some of them were there, some of them weren't, but most of it was playing on my nostalgia. But like Pancras's death being kind of really quick, not really understanding the whole reason for the journey, although you do have some explanation, it's not as fraught and it's not as toiled over. Not climbing the mountain. There's certain things there that just lose their emotional connection that I think it makes Dragon Quest a fun, easy to watch movie, but does it make it Dragon Quest V, the emotional, like, growing up, coming of age, raising the hero story? No, it doesn't. Not at all, I don't think. And I think that's probably my biggest issue, is that I think it lets it down in the first 10 minutes and then the ending. I don't mind the sappiness. Like, I don't mind the film necessarily telling me, hey, like, we play this game because we just want to go on the adventure and we pick these things because we love them and do this and that. What I didn't like as much, I don't think I needed to be told it, because actually, why am I sitting here watching this film? Because I love Dragon Quest V. That's why. I don't need to be told by some narrative device that's completely separate from the rest of the film, oh, hey, this is why you're watching this film, isn't it? Like, you don't need to tell me that. But, like, what bugged me most was the fact that it was a virus program that was telling me it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the film still has a section after this twist. Like, it's not much, it's just the hero's walking away.
Yeah, the virus is slowly undoing the world around the hero, and then he's saved at the last moment by an antivirus who is amusingly the slime Gertrude.
Yeah, voiced by Spike Spiegel.
They have Steve Bloom voice him, and in the Japanese version, he's voiced by a celebrity voice actor who does a lot of narration work. So just a major voice of God character, which is a voice of God actor, which is amusing, coming out of a tiny slime. And Stephen Bloom is a good choice, or maybe Stephen Blum is his name, is a good choice, I think, for the English version. And that resolution isn't what bothered me, even though it's contrived, which is an adjective that I've used 18 times during this episode. But Alana really hit it. It's not the message of "We love Dragon Quest" that bothered me, or even the sappiness of that message. It's the way it was sort of just told to us, instead of letting us feel the nostalgia and just experience our love through a well executed movie. They sort of told us how to feel and then ended on an awkward note.
Yeah, I think the film would have been better served if they wanted to go for that twist ending. I think it would have been better off ending with it rather than having a little bit extra afterwards as well, and not having the virus program. I think maybe showing a bunch of different kids going into this VR system, like, then you aren't just having one story. You're seeing all these other kids going in and saying, oh, I want to pick Bianca. Oh, I want to pick Nira. Oh, I want this monster. Oh, I want that. I feel like getting a wider perspective may have been a bit better rather than having one person's story, because, like, I don't know, as Zach said, Deborah is his pick. I know she's not in the film, but, like, the Bianca pick is not going to be for everybody, and some people had Nira, and it's a way to experience one other person's journey, sure, but, like, yeah, I think the way it's told is just, it didn't sit well with me at all. Like, it's telling me how to feel about the film, and I don't want to be told how to feel about that film. Like, I had a dumb smile on my face for most of the time, even if they did miss out bits, but, yeah, like, why are you going to tell me to give me an agenda that I don't think needed to be there at all? Like, that obviously, anyway, I don't think.
It's a real puzzling choice, and I don't think it landed as powerfully as I wanted it to land. A lot of people compared this ending to the twist ending in the Lego movie, which is a very, very good movie. And in the Lego movie, like, throughout the story, the main character is sort of made fun of for being incompetent or following the directions too much. And at the end of the movie, they sort of communicate the idea that Legos, it's okay to follow the directions, it's okay to build whatever you want and go wild. Legos are sort of for everyone and about and just about building what you want to build. But they do that without telling it to you. They do it in a way that is like surprising and cool, but not just directly telling you how to feel. And so that's awkward coming out of this movie, and it just doesn't work. It's not the message, it's the execution of the message, and I think ultimately the biggest weaknesses of this movie are the beginning and the end. It doesn't properly set up foreshadowing or character motivation that is extremely powerful in the game, and it ends on this weird choice that I think puts the whole movie in a different context and is ultimately weakens it rather than strengthens it. And again, I didn't hate this movie. I'm glad I watched it. I'm okay with the fact that it exists, but it's not a strong adaptation of Dragon Quest V, which is something I would have ultimately preferred to what we got.
Yeah, I mean, the ending to me, I mean, I agree with everything you guys just said. Also, just feels like a cheap excuse for why it doesn't work very well. Like, oh, you know this story. You're fine. You get it. You get the Pankraz moment, even if we did an atrocious job of setting it up. I mean, we get that you know who the Saber Cat and who Bianca and Nera are. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's to me that is the greatest sin it commits. I mean, if they had done this. Again, take those 15 minutes at the end and give me 15 minutes with Pankraz, and the whole movie is so much stronger. I have issues with the ending. I mean, Harry just showing up on a ship for no reason at all is a problem. And I can handle that because it makes absolutely no sense, but I can handle it. But
people love callbacks, but what a weird callback.
Yeah, it's a totally nonsensical one. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like you made an excuse for your movie being bad when you could have spent that animation money on making your movie actually kind of good. And again, dumb smile, but still, it was frustrating.
It's weird that of the video game adaptations to have come in February, I have to sort of ruefully admit that the Sonic the Hedgehog one is better than the Dragon Quest one.
Which was fun.
Which coming from me is maybe a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, same here.
But again, we have mixed feelings on this movie. Please read Alana's review because it's very eloquently written and goes over many but not all of the same points that we went over in this podcast. Let's say you're speaking to someone who has played Dragon Quest V and enjoyed it. Would you recommend this movie to them?
Yeah.
I probably would, yeah. I would say it's worth watching.
There are enough moments that gave me like some of the musical cues, and we didn't talk about Laja's voice performance, but I thought it was delightful.
Yeah,
I thought it was great. I loved seeing like golems running around and a slime. I mean, like I feel like we were very negative here, more negative than my feelings actually are. I mean, like there are so many moments throughout, like even just seeing the Zenithian sword being a thing, seeing that he had the son had blonde hair. I mean, like there are so many callbacks and moments.
Maybe
that, like, again,
maybe my favorite scene in terms of comedy in this movie was when the son uses the Zenithian sword for the first time, and it's hugely powerful because he's discovering his powers as the hero, and he completely annihilates two Cyclops.
Yeah.
that is that or Gigantes maybe that is fighting, and then a third one that's with him just sort of looks at the sun and looks at his fallen comrades and just hustles out of there.
They would do that.
Yeah, there are a lot of moments I liked in this movie. It isn't a very good movie, but like if you like Dragon Quest V and you can just see it as like as you said, like a sports center of Dragon Quest V, then fine. I mean, I think that's okay, and I enjoyed it for that reason.
So yeah, Dragon Quest Your Story is not exactly an adaptation of Dragon Quest V. It's a highlights package of Dragon Quest V that goes in a strange direction at the very end. And again, the three of us, I think, it's safe to say we have mixed feelings on it. But ultimately, I think all three of us are voting. Check it out. Like it's if you don't mind spending 90 minutes on a confusing adaptation, then it's not the worst way to spend those 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's worth it for the animation quality and the dubbing, I would say. Definitely.
And the music cues, you said this before recording, but like some of the Sugiyama cues are really cool just to see in movie form.
Yeah.
I think that Sugiyama is not the greatest video game music composer.
Oh, really?
Which is well documented on other episodes of this podcast. But like hearing classic Dragon Quest V music hit in sort of movie cues instead of being persistent music in a video game, I think fits a little better. Because we're getting less of it, which is for the best, and it's timed in a way that's mostly smart. So again, like Sugiyama's music, for once, not one of the worst parts of a Dragon Quest adaptation. Okay, I think we're starting to run out of things to talk about for Dragon Quest Your Story. So, listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this movie review journey. We have several movie and screen adaptation reviews going up on the website. And Zach, you're spearheading a couple of these. We have either already out or upcoming discussions on the Ni no Kuni movie.
Ni no Kuni should be up, and we have The Witcher coming up, and we have Alana's, and we'll also have a review of Castlevania, and also like a big feature on lots of anime adaptations as well.
Yeah, that's right. That anime adaptations feature has like around a dozen entries on it or more. So it's
got like 16. Yeah,
16. Okay, well, you would know having edited the feature, but yeah. So just ballparking it, we have about 20 blurbs or full features about screen adaptations of RPGs landing in February and March. So please check all of those out on rpgfan.com. It's been I didn't write anything for them this time, but it's been a fun set of features to follow. At least something going on at rpgfan.com right now. But what else do we have going on? RPG Fan has a Facebook page and a Twitter page and a Instagram page, a Discord server, and a Twitch channel with something streaming every day. Please check out all of our content on rpgfan.com in those theaters. We also have 3 other fine podcasts: Random Encounter about randomness, Phoenix Edge about current events, which is hosted live on YouTube every week, and Rhythm Encounter about video game music, whose last episode was blank space here. But sticking to Retro Encounter for now, we have several more episodes planned coming in March and April. We have an episode on RPG adaptations coming next week. We had a similar episode on RPG adaptations in 2018, and this one is basically more of what that episode was. They talk about their favorite video games, books, movies, series that aren't RPGs that they would like to see in RPG form. I'm pretty sure Peter talks about Lord of the Rings again, which is
probably
which is in character.
I'm certain he does.
Yeah, which is in character both for him and the spirit of that episode. So enjoy that next week. And later this month, we're doing 2 episodes on Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which was a 2015 Wii U game that had a recent 2020 Switch port. I am playing that game for the first time on the Switch, and I'm enjoying it a lot, so expect some mostly positive commentary from me when you hear those episodes later in March. And I think it's late enough for me to announce this. The official Retro Encounter game journal for April is going to be Soul Blazer, that quintet RPG for the Super Nintendo that goes some real strange places and makes some really interesting storytelling choices. It had 2 sequels in Illusion of Gaia, which is Illusion of Time in Europe, and Terra Enigma, which we had multiple episodes on in Retro Encounter's first year of existing. So yeah, Soul Blazer is the game coming in April. So I think that's about enough for Retro Encounter and RPG Fan. Let's tell listeners how to reach us and then sign off. Starting with you, Alana.
So the best way to get a hold of me is on Twitter. I am at Alana Hagues, so please come and follow me and hit me up.
And Zach.
You can find me on Discord at ZachW and also at ZachW@RPGFan.com. Email.
And as for me, listeners, you can find me on Twitter at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs at other times. I am Monsoon Mike on Discord and Monsoon on RPG Fans forums. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to watch this movie again, but I hear that season 3 of Castlevania is pretty good. Maybe I should watch that on Netflix too instead.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe you should check RPG Fan for a review of that coming up pretty soon here.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be up at the time that this episode posts. I'd have to check the schedule though.
I'm taking a day off in March for something, but it's not Castlevania, unfortunately.
Well, okay. I mean, Castlevania is about demons and vampires and you know, and like someone's soul being destroyed in the journey to stop Dracula. But that's not half as dark as what goes on in the mind of Tom Nook.
Trapped on an island with tanukis.
Thank you. Good night and good luck.
Capitalist.